Throughout more than 2,000 years of imperial China, hundreds of men fought, schemed, and killed to wear the dragon crown. Some inherited it, some stole it, some ruled for decades, while others barely survived a few months before being overthrown. Yet despite all those emperors, only one woman ever managed to sit on the dragon throne as emperor, not empress, not queen, emperor. And the road she took to get there was filled with manipulation, political genius, mysterious deaths, and enough betrayals to make even the most ruthless rulers look ordinary. Her name was Wu Zetian. She wasn't born into the royal family. She wasn't next in line for the throne. And if you had met her as a teenager, nothing would have suggested she would one day control the most powerful empire in Asia. In fact, according to the traditions of her time, her future had already been decided before she was even old enough to understand it. Wu was born in the year 624 during the Tang Dynasty, one of the richest and most powerful periods in Chinese history. Unlike many girls, she grew up in a wealthy family. Her father worked as an important government official, which meant Wu had access to books, education, and conversations about politics that most women were never allowed to hear. While other girls learned music, embroidery, and how to become a proper wife, Wu preferred reading history and listening to stories about famous rulers. She became fascinated by one simple question: what separates an ordinary person from someone who controls an entire empire? At the age of 14, she received an answer. Like many young noble women, Wu was selected to enter the imperial palace as one of Emperor Taizong's concubines. If you've never heard of a concubine before, think of it as being one of the emperor's many official partners. It sounded glamorous, but in reality, it was one of the most competitive places on earth. Hundreds of women lived inside the palace, all hoping to gain the emperor's attention because attention meant influence, luxury, and sometimes survival. Most concubines spent their lives waiting for the emperor to notice them. Wu spent her time studying everyone else. She watched ministers argue about taxes and wars. She noticed which generals the emperor trusted the most. She learned which servants carried secrets from one palace room to another. Before long, she realized something that would define the rest of her life. Power wasn't always sitting on the throne. Sometimes it stood quietly beside it. For years, Wu remained a relatively unimportant concubine. Emperor Taizong respected her intelligence but never made her one of his favorites. To many people, that would have been disappointing. To Wu, it was an opportunity. The less attention she attracted, the more she could observe without anyone seeing her as a threat. Then everything changed. In the year 649, Emperor Taizong died after ruling China for more than 2 decades. Normally, that would have ended Wu's story immediately. According to imperial tradition, any concubine who had not given birth to one of the emperor's children was expected to shave her head, leave the palace forever, and spend the rest of her life inside a Buddhist monastery. And that's exactly what happened. One day, she lived among golden palaces. The next, she was wearing simple robes behind monastery walls. Game over. Or at least that's what everyone thought. Because before Taizong died, one person inside the palace had already started paying attention to Wu, his son, Li Ji. Now, here's where the story becomes interesting. Li Ji wasn't even supposed to become emperor in the first place. Traditionally, the oldest son inherited the throne, but the Tang royal family was anything but simple. One brother was removed after plotting against his own father. Another lost his chance because the emperor no longer trusted him. Without doing very much himself, Li Ji slowly became the last serious candidate left. Sometimes surviving was more important than winning. When Emperor Taizong finally passed away, Li Ji became Emperor Gaozong, and almost immediately he made a decision that shocked the imperial court. Instead of leaving Wu inside the monastery like tradition demanded, he ordered her back to the palace. Nobody expected it. Senior officials protested. Confucian scholars argued it was completely inappropriate. Rumors spread across the capital, but Gaozong ignored all of them. For Wu, this wasn't just a second chance. It was the opportunity she had been waiting for her entire life. Returning to the palace was the easy part. Surviving it was something else entirely. By the time Wu came back, the emperor already had an official wife, Empress Wang, along with several powerful consorts who had spent years building alliances inside the palace. They weren't about to welcome a former concubine who had mysteriously returned from a monastery. From the moment Wu walked through the palace gates, she became a target. The Tang court looked magnificent on the outside. Marble halls, silk curtains, beautiful gardens, and endless ceremonies made it seem like paradise. In reality, it was a battlefield. People didn't fight with swords, they fought with rumors. One wrong sentence could destroy an entire family. One accusation could end a political career forever. Every servant carried information. Every official belonged to someone's faction. Even the emperor couldn't fully trust everyone around him. Wu understood this almost immediately. Instead of making enemies too quickly, she started making herself indispensable. Whenever Gaozong discussed government matters, Wu listened carefully. She remembered names, provinces, military reports, and tax records with incredible accuracy. Soon the emperor began asking for her opinion more often than anyone else's, and that worried the rest of the palace, because influence was becoming power. Then tragedy struck. Wu gave birth to a baby girl. It should have been one of the happiest moments of her life. Instead, it became one of history's greatest mysteries. Only a few months after being born, the child was found dead inside her cradle. Nobody knew exactly what had happened. Wu immediately accused Empress Wang of murdering the baby out of jealousy. Gaozong was devastated. Wang denied everything, insisting she had nothing to do with the child's death. But there was a problem. There were no witnesses, no evidence, only accusations. Centuries later, another theory appeared. Some historians claimed Wu had actually killed her own daughter to frame Empress Wang and remove her biggest rival forever. It's an unbelievable story. But here's the interesting part. There is no solid contemporary evidence proving it ever happened. Most accounts accusing Wu were written decades after her death by historians who believed a woman should never have ruled China in the first place. Were they telling the truth, or were they writing propaganda? Nobody knows. The mystery has survived for more than 1,300 years. Whatever really happened, the consequences were enormous. Empress Wang lost the emperor's trust. Soon afterward, she was removed from her position. Not long later, she and another rival, consort Xiao, were executed under horrifying circumstances. With her greatest opponents gone, Wu became the new empress of China. Most people would have stopped there. After all, becoming empress was already the highest position any woman could realistically achieve. But Wu didn't want to stand beside the throne. She wanted to control it. As fate would have it, Emperor Gaozong's health slowly began to decline. Historians believe he suffered from recurring illnesses that caused severe headaches, dizziness, and periods where he was simply unable to govern effectively. Somebody had to run the empire. That somebody became Wu. At first, she only helped review official documents. Then she began attending important meetings. Soon, ministers realized something strange. Even when the emperor spoke, many decisions were actually coming from Wu. Behind a silk curtain inside the throne room, she quietly listened to every discussion. Officials presented reports to Gaozong, but they knew another pair of ears was judging every word they said. And Wu remembered everything. She knew which governors were corrupt, which generals exaggerated victories, which ministers secretly supported rival factions. Lying to her became almost impossible. One by one, experienced officials who underestimated her found themselves removed from office. Others quickly learned it was much safer to work with her than against her. By now, Wu wasn't simply influencing the government, she was becoming the government, and before long she would make a decision so shocking that it would completely change Chinese history forever. By now, Wu Zetian had become the most powerful person in China without officially wearing the crown. That was unusual, because throughout history, people who controlled the government from the shadows usually stayed there. It was safer. If something went wrong, the emperor took the blame. If something went right, they still enjoyed the benefits. Wu had something far more ambitious in mind. She wanted everyone to know exactly who was in charge. When Emperor Gaozong died in 683, the question of succession immediately threw the empire into chaos. His son became emperor, but only in name. The young ruler quickly discovered that the real authority still belonged to his mother. That arrangement didn't last long. When the new emperor showed signs of becoming independent, Wu removed him from the throne and replaced him with another son she believed would be easier to control. Imagine becoming emperor of China, only to realize your own mother had more power than you. For several years, Wu ruled through her sons while continuing to strengthen her position. Every loyal official was promoted, every dangerous rival was removed. The civil service examination system expanded even further, allowing talented men from ordinary families to enter government instead of leaving power in the hands of ancient noble clans. Those reforms weren't just popular, they were smart. Every new official owed his career to Wu instead of the old aristocracy. That meant their loyalty belonged to her. Meanwhile, China's economy continued growing. Farmers enjoyed successful harvests, trade along the Silk Road brought enormous wealth into the empire, and the capital became one of the busiest cities in the world. Foreign ambassadors arrived from Korea, Japan, Central Asia, and beyond, impressed by the stability and power of the Tang Empire. To ordinary citizens, life was improving. To Wu's enemies, she was becoming impossible to stop. Then came the moment that changed Chinese history forever. In the year 690, Wu made an announcement nobody thought possible. She declared the Tang Dynasty finished. In its place, she founded a brand new dynasty called the Zhou Dynasty. Then she did something even more shocking. She declared herself emperor, not empress, emperor. It may sound like a small difference today, but in ancient China, it meant everything. Empress was the wife of an emperor. Emperor was the son of heaven. For more than 1,000 years, everyone believed that title could belong only to a man. Wu simply ignored that tradition tradition. Some officials accepted her decision immediately, others had no choice. A few openly opposed her, and they disappeared surprisingly quickly. To strengthen her claim, Wu turned to Buddhism. Influential monks promoted prophecies describing a divinely chosen ruler who would bring peace and prosperity to the empire. Magnificent temples were built, sacred texts were copied, and religious ceremonies reinforced the idea that heaven itself supported Wu's rule. Whether people truly believed it or not hardly mattered. The empire remained stable, taxes were collected, trade continued, the government functioned. Results spoke louder than tradition. Of course, Wu's reign wasn't peaceful for everyone. She expanded the empire's intelligence network, creating one of the most feared systems of secret investigators in Chinese history. Officials constantly worried someone was listening. Noble families feared accusations of treason. Several powerful ministers were arrested or executed after allegedly plotting against the throne. Were all those conspiracies real? Probably not, but they didn't need to be. Fear alone kept many potential enemies silent. By the early 700s, Wu was nearly 80 years old. Age slowly weakened the woman who had spent decades outmaneuvering nearly everyone around her. Seeing the opportunity, senior ministers finally acted. In 705, they carried out a palace coup, forcing the elderly emperor to surrender the throne. The Tang Dynasty was restored. Only months later, Wu Zetian died, but even in death, she left behind one final mystery. Outside her tomb stands a giant stone monument. Unlike every other imperial monument, it contains no inscription, no list of achievements, no victories, no praise, nothing. Some believe Wu wanted future generations to judge her for themselves. Others believe her successors couldn't decide whether to honor her or condemn her. More than 13 centuries later, historians are still arguing about the answer. Was Wu Zetian a ruthless tyrant who climbed to power through fear and manipulation? Or was she one of China's greatest rulers, judged more harshly simply because she was a woman? Perhaps the empty monument says more than any inscription ever could, because sometimes history leaves the final verdict to us.